At one point, he just stopped and he said, I can't do this. I knew that it was serious.
How long are you going to be there in the med unit?
Coming at you, Luanne.
This man was about as close to death as I've seen somebody from HAPE. Call 12 hours before Joe got to my clinic tent, telling us that one of the expedition guide's clients was ill.
How long are you going to be there in the med unit?
People try not to say names on the radio, but we all clustered around the radio and figured out really quickly that it was our friend Joe.
We are going over to the med clinic, okay? You'll be in really good hands over there.
Of course, we're always intimately involved with a rescue and taking care of the person that comes down, but when you know that person and you've got a name to put with a face, it becomes even that much more compelling.
Joe and I went up to Camp 1 and we did really great. Actually, I was really impressed with Joe and how coordinated he was. We were planning on going to Camp 2 and spending at least one night at Camp 2. We wake up the next morning and Joe just seemed like he wanted just to lie down and that's it. So I told, Joe, the game plan was, hey, going up to Camp 3 the next day is out of the question. We're going to go down.
The first report I got from the expedition leader over the radio was that his client was really, really fatigued and he had a little bit of a dry cough.
American climber Joe Hughes has to be helped and often carried down over 5,000 vertical feet, passing through the treacherous Khumbu icefall.
We got reports from other climbers who passed him on the icefall and said, boy, this guy doesn't look very good.
I'd like to get him to our base camp, just let him relax just for a bit, and then get him over.
I heard over the radio from the expedition leader that he wanted to stop at their expedition tent just to warm up, drink a cup of tea, and then come over to the clinic tent. The reality is we can see each other from across the icefall, but there are so many boulders and dips. It's about a 30-minute walk when you're feeling well, just to get from our tent to Joe's tent. And when you're feeling ill and you're needing to be carried, of course, it takes a little bit longer. I didn't want them to stop. I didn't want them to try and drink tea. I was really worried. I was concerned that if Joe stopped to rest in his tent, he might not wake up.
There you go. Let's go ahead and get Joe outside.
Time was really critical at this point. I was really worried that he was developing high-altitude pulmonary edema. The guide called and he said, hey, you know what, this guy can't walk anymore. So at that point, I dispatched a couple of the Sherpas from our camp with a stretcher, and we went to go get him.
Here, slide up a little bit, Joe. There you go.
I got a radio transmission from our Sherpas that were helping carry Joe, that he was blue and that he looked much more ill than we were initially led to believe. I knew that we needed to ramp up and get ready for a more critical patient than we anticipated. He also told me that the patient was shivering, so I knew he was suffering from hypothermia. So we've got our oxygen concentrator charged and ready to go. We've got intravenous fluids warmed to 102 degrees. We are also getting hot packs ready so that we can do some external rewarming. We've got a down bag called a doctor down that we can put the patient in with warm water bottles and hot packs. And then of course we've got our gamma bag out, ready, you know, kind of unzipped, laid out, and ready to go. I was really surprised when Joe got down the mountain to see how bad he really was.
Coming at you, Luanne.
His face was blue. I saw him drowning. This man was about as close to death as I've seen somebody from HAPE. Can you put the other end of put the orange thing over him?
Toss me a glove, Blackbird. Blackbird, toss me a glove. No, glove. Glove.
Go in? Good. We put the hot packs on him and wrapped him up and down. And then once we got his breathing slowed enough that he could take a pill, I gave him a bunch of pills. I mean, he was a trooper. I gave him sildenafil, which is popularly known as Viagra, which helps lower the blood pressure in the lungs that is causing this blood to kind of squeeze that fluid out into the breathing space. I thought, gosh, he'll be better now than he was up at Camp 1 or Camp 2 because he will have been on oxygen. And in fact, he was much worse.
I almost died. I couldn't walk. I couldn't do anything.
The minute I saw Joe's face, I turned around to his expedition leader and I said, start working on a helicopter. He needs to go to somebody who treats pulmonary edema, and I have 2 doctors that I can give you to. And I can arrange that part in the morning. I can talk to the doctors and get that part arranged. And so if you can just get arranged for like 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. a helicopter so that they can be watching the weather and seeing what's available.
Okay.
Tonight, that would be great.
That's good.
I knew that Joe was critical and we needed to get him evacuated. We would definitely not attempt a night landing at Everest Base Camp. We just don't have a safe area to land at night, no matter how critical the situation is.
No, sat 63.
What happens with pulmonary edema is that all of a sudden all of the contents of the blood vessels start leaking out and pooling in our breathing spaces, in the air spaces of our lungs.
Joe's condition, known as high-altitude pulmonary edema, or HAPE, can strike any climber at any time in the low oxygen environment of high altitude. The reduced oxygen in Joe's blood, or hypoxia, causes his blood vessels to dramatically constrict, dangerously increasing the blood pressure in his lungs and causing blood to flood his air spaces.
And that's why people have these frothy, congested coughs, because they are literally drowning in their own blood. During the course of a 12-hour stay in my clinic, I watched Joe fill buckets of fluid came out of Joe's lungs. It was kind of disgusting. I mean, not at the time. I thought, get it out. But some of our Sherpas were, having to turn pale and leave the tent because At times it looked like Joe was throwing up, and a couple of times during the night I said, "Joe, are you throwing up?" And he said, "No, it's coming out of my lungs." Most of our treatment at the beginning there was focused on rewarming him and getting the medications in him so that we could get him feeling better enough to tolerate lying down. He really didn't want to lie down flat. It made him feel like he was drowning, and he was right.
Gotta get more O2.
What's that?
More O2.
More OT.
When Joe came in, my immediate thought was get oxygen on him, get the medications in as quickly as I can, and get him in the bag.
The Gamov bag is a portable hyperbaric chamber designed to simulate descent of the patient by increasing air pressure. Since its invention, it's become a necessity in high-altitude medicine.
I was kind of in a race, wanting to get all the medications in so they could be working on him and getting into his system while he's in the Gamov bag.
You can stick some nice on my leg.
Yep. These aren't too hard, are they now? Put your hands in this way. Like this.
If you feel your ears getting a little full, what we could do is if we can drop the feet of this stretcher. So we're dealing with this hypothermic, dehydrated, critically ill, hypoxic guy. Trying to resuscitate him, the last thing in the world I thought might happen was to have the chamber blow up.